Talk about this now with Alanna O'Malley, who joins me from The Hague. She's a United Nations analyst and an associate history professor at Leiden University. Welcome to you so much. You're the perfect guest to have on this, because when I think about the UN Security Council, I just see this obvious Achilles heel, the veto system. We had a guest claim the US has used it at least 6 times regarding Gaza. Why create a system with such a seemingly obvious flaw?
So actually, this is the 6th US veto that we've seen that they've used to protect Israel since the recent assault on Gaza. But overall, it brings to 51 times that the US have used their veto in this regard. The veto system was created in 1945 when the UN was set up at the end of the Second World War, and it was a way in which to tie in all the world's global powers together to give them all an equal say in the control of the world and in being able to respond to conflict. But at that time, of course, the world superpowers were in fact quite different than the kind of global constellation of power that we see now. So it's a very outdated system.
It's a system that obviously gives those with the power of veto the ability just to stop anything that affects them in a negative way. Along the way, and there are so many critics of it these days, along the way, or even now, are there any other systems that could be used instead? Because the clock seems to be ticking on the future of the Security Council.
So what we've seen in recent years is a greater recourse to the General Assembly. So when the Security Council has been deadlocked on issues, especially on the Gaza question, but also on issues surrounding Ukraine, then we see members moving the issue to the General Assembly, where all 193 UN member states have an equal vote. So we've seen a greater use of the General Assembly to respond to conflict when the Security Council is deadlocked. But we've also seen countries like South Africa, who has leading the cause against the case against Israel in the International Court of Justice here in The Hague. So we see that there are other mechanisms legally and politically within the UN system that are getting greater use now that the veto system is proving so problematic and really paralyzing the UN's ability to effectively respond to global conflict.
I'm going to be harsh here, but I'm just calling it how I see it. It seems like the UN's an awful lot of talk and not a lot of action. Even the ICJ seems completely incapable of enforcing its decisions. Does this whole system need to be scrapped and come up with something new?
Okay, so you can't talk about scrapping the whole system because it's highly unlikely that we would be able to create and agree on a system of power as an alternative to the UN in which you could convince Russia and the US and China and Israel to share power with other states. So I think the idea of scrapping it is like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But actually, what we really need to take seriously are questions of reform. And this is important because what we saw yesterday was 14 votes in favor of this resolution on Gaza, including all of the US's traditional allies like the United Kingdom, and actually the British ambassador to the UN gave a very strongly worded speech in the Security Council calling for this resolution to be passed. So what we need those member states to do is to take very seriously the prospect of UN reform. And next week is General Assembly week. The UN 80 initiative is going forward because the United Nations will turn 80 in October, on the 24th of October. And there is a series of reform proposals being presented and will be discussed next week in New York. So we need those 14 members of the Council, plus the other 180 members of the General Assembly, to take very seriously the whole question of UN reform. Because without doing that, they are also responsible for making the UN impotent on these issues.
Alanna, it was great to speak to you. You've done a good job there clarifying the situation for us. Alanna O'Malley, who's a United Nations analyst, is my guest. Thank you.